I prostrate to the teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. I prostrate to Manjushri wisdom and courage. I prostrate to the lineage masters of great kindness, the unsurpassed, profound, and subtle Dharma, difficult to encounter in hundreds of thousands of eons. Now I see, hear, and receive it. May I understand the true meaning of the Tathagata, generate supreme bodhicitta to liberate all sentient beings. Now, next, we will continue carefully studying and exploring the guidance on the preliminary practices of Dzogchen together as we move forward. Now, we are discussing the second section, that is contemplating the impermanence and inevitable transience of sentient beings themselves, especially as it pertains to their very existence. Earlier, as we have just discussed in our previous section, we were talking about all of the various phenomena, specifically those found within the container world, how they change in an instant, in a split second. There is nothing that remains constant and unchanging. This includes the houses we live in, our own beds and mattresses. All of these are impermanent. Even the Dharma halls where many people study are also impermanent. Just like the example I actually gave to many Dharma friends some time ago, from the time His Holiness began teaching us up until now, the Dharma hall has changed many times. While teaching Dharma to Han Chinese disciples, our Dharma hall has changed many times. Even now, as we still carefully examine the Bodhicharyavatara, many lay practitioners, their Dharma centers, their places of study have changed. This is a sign of impermanence. Each of us should also carefully reflect on our own place of residence and thoughtfully consider it. What kind of environment did you actually live in specifically when you were very young? What kind of environment and house did you live in while you were studying? And what place do you live in now, and what will it become in the future? So when we observe from various views, we will truly understand that the external material world is entirely impermanent. Next, it is essential for us to take the time to fully understand and grasp the fact that all sentient beings, all forms of life, none of them are permanent. All are impermanent. Of course, in general, this is a vague concept. Everyone feels things impermanent. We often encountered this particular point, when we were in middle school as well. It was actually quite common. Everything in the world is always changing. There is truly no such thing as an unchanging law. For example, some viewpoints of previous generations of physicists, although some claimed that there are unchanging laws, in the years that followed, later scholars carefully examined the arguments and evidence put forward by their predecessors, and through thorough, so we concluded that everything in the world is always in a constant state of motion, always moving, never truly still. We once had a teacher who really wasn't very nice to me. Because I studied Buddhism quite extensively and deeply, I truly and strongly believed in the principle of cause and effect, that good deeds will always bring about good results, and bad deeds, in turn, inevitably bring bad results. Once I mentioned this in front of the teacher, and he was a bit displeased. He said, although everything is in motion and constantly changing, the way you approach and process your thoughts contains certain issues and flaws that need to be addressed, as your current method of thinking is not entirely effective and may lead to misunderstandings or incorrect conclusions. Once, when I asked a question, he criticized me in front of the whole class. That teacher didn't believe in Buddhism at all. As far as I know, he may have already passed away from this world by now. He would call on students by name in class, and I can still remember the look on his face. His mouth was completely, almost unnaturally crooked as he slowly said, "Your way of thinking, it really does have some rather serious, significant problems, He even said to me quite bluntly that when I grow up in the future, I will not amount to anything significant in life, and that I will definitely end up breaking the law according to his belief. So, indeed, everything is constantly changing. There is no law that is permanent and unchanging. I think this concept also exists in worldly knowledge in some sense, or at least to a certain extent, perhaps. But it is not as systematic and not nearly as profound or comprehensive in its approach as in Buddhism. There's truly nothing at all like what we are talking about, not even close, in moving forward. Here we examine and realize it in an especially meticulous way, integrating it with our own thoughts and experiences. Such teachings are truly rare and precious. Everyone, including Buddhists, always talks about how all phenomena are impermanent. Everyone acknowledges this point, but for the mind to genuinely and truly give rise to the perception of impermanence in its own experience, to feel an urgent need to do anything, to have no lasting attachment to worldly things, and to feel a strong eagerness to learn. Life is so very, very short, and it's really, truly hard to know exactly when I will eventually absolutely die. I think that most people do not have this kind of mindset, even conceptually. This includes many scholars and some so-called practitioners. Their contemplation of impermanence is not very well developed, whether in Chan Buddhism or among lamas and Tibetan Buddhist masters, as well as some good practitioners. They use the contemplation of impermanence day and night to spur themselves on and to keep themselves in check. They have this kind of motivation for practice. Therefore, I sincerely hope that everyone will truly make a genuine and heartfelt effort in thoughtfully contemplating the nature of impermanence. Of course, after truly making an effort, brief or occasional contemplation of impermanence is something anyone can experience. For example, after attending a lecture or reading a great book, or when a family member or loved one passes away, several causes and conditions may lead to a thought arising in our mind: all is impermanent. I must be mindful and practice. Such occasional thoughts are very easy to arise. However, it is not easy for this contemplation of impermanence to remain in our hearts over the long term. For many people, this kind of practice is rare and hard to do. That's why the preliminary practices truly need to be studied often, practiced often, and reviewed often. If you don't do this, as ordinary people, our minds are quite often very easily and frequently tempted by a wide variety of different external circumstances and influences. As a result, our temporary states of mind are like sunlight between the clouds and are quickly obscured by the dark clouds of external distractions. That is why the senior masters, with their profound insight and years of experience, have always said that the so-called forward movement is in fact also the correct movement to follow in practice, more important than main practice. I remember there was once a practitioner who always talked about Dzogchen and some advanced Chan topics, and placed importance on them. But whenever it came to impermanence or the suffering of samsara, she didn't pay much attention. I've heard that in recent times there have been quite a few people who have been saying on multiple occasions that how she was in realization. I thought she had realization, but for it to become deeply rooted in one's own mind stream over the long term, one must consistently and regularly practice the preliminaries. During the process of practicing, it's not just about completing a certain number of repetitions, it's about the quality. With every practice instruction, you should have a personal experience. As I said recently, your mind truly needs to undergo a transformation. That is the measure of genuine practice. When you pray to your guru, your sense of heartfelt devotion and reverence should move you to tears. If you can't shed tears, at the very least, your expression toward all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and your guru should reflect a sense of reverence. When you contemplate impermanence, it's not just about thinking impermanence as if it's on the surface or not. Only your mind, but also your flesh is unmoved. Not to mention the flesh, even your skin doesn't react. You feel absolutely nothing. Impermanence, yes. Not feeling anything isn't acceptable. The best kind of practice is when you feel a tremor from deep within your bones. You must have a certain kind of profound and deeply personal inner experience. This particular kind of experience is in fact very powerful and truly significant. So when we practice, for example, I sincerely hope that everyone won't just focus on doing a large number of external forms and rituals, especially when it comes to daily practices. Of course, these are virtuous actions and they are good, but in reality, their significance is not that great. So no matter which practice we are doing, it's best if what I hope for most is that you have a feeling that arises from your own mind. If you have a certain feeling when you practice the preliminaries, then you've already tasted its flavor and it won't be easy to change in the future. You say you have practiced impermanence very well. Someone else says impermanence is great, you practice it. But if you don't have your own feeling or experience, it won't work. They say practicing impermanence isn't meaningful. What practice do you want to do? Yes, yes, yes. Because you've never truly tasted its flavor yourself. As soon as someone speaks, you immediately change. But if you yourself feel that this is truly extraordinary and you have a sense of certainty during your practice, this kind of certainty is not easily swayed or changed by external circumstances or influences. Next, let's begin to study all sentient beings from the highest realm of the peak of existence down to the lowest level of hell. Not a single one can ever escape death. Everyone should be clear about this. From the highest realm below the peak of neither perception nor non-perception down to including all of the various intermediate hells, the hungry ghosts, animals, humans, as well as the celestial and heavenly beings, all sentient beings, countless and boundless, not just the more than 6 billion human beings currently inhabiting planet Earth right now. At this very moment, it's not like that. This includes aquatic animals and all living beings in the outside world. Not a single one can escape death in the end. Of course, with rare exceptions of those who have attained the Vidyadhara level of longevity, or a handful of great masters whose physical bodies remain incorrupt and who ascend directly to pure lands. All of them, in the end, must, sooner or later, inevitably face death. Eventually, at some point in the end, as it is stated in the Book of Solaces, on earth or in the heavens, is there anyone born who does not die? Have you ever seen such a thing, or do you have any doubts about it? The meaning is wherever birth exists, there will inevitably be, from the fortunate celestial realms of the heavens on down, the existence of beings who are born but do not die is something that has never been seen or heard of. There will never be any ambiguous, uncertain, or lingering doubt such as the question, will I die or not? From this scriptural evidence, we can understand that in this world, if there is life, then there must inevitably also be death, as is the way of things. Such is the nature of existence. As long as there is birth, there will certainly, inevitably, definitely be death. In a quiet and peaceful monastery, there was once a young monk who, while going about his daily tasks, accidentally he didn't dare to tell him directly, forget the details of the story if I recall correctly, but later you all remember, clearly it was Ikkyu, wasn't it? Yes. Later, the master said, wherever there is birth, there is death. And then he said, your cup has died, hasn't it? Master, your cup has died. In other words, that's roughly what he meant to say. Essentially, that's the message he was trying to convey. In the end, the master didn't criticize him, and he also understood the impermanence of things. In this world, whether it's a person or any sentient being, as long as there is life from the higher realms on down, all who are born will, sooner or later, inevitably die. But have we ever seen or heard of anyone in this world in all of human history who does not die ever? Is there any reasonable doubt or ambiguity in any way whatsoever about this? Maybe this sentient being won't die, or that one is said to be immortal. There are tales of immortality, but if someone truly achieved immortality, did they really attain certain spiritual attainments mentioned in religious traditions? But such attainments have their own ways of being described. Apart from that, truly in this world, is there any place where all living beings are born but do not die? No one can truly arrange for that. No one can really make it happen at all. Whether on the ground, in the sky, or in the mountains, it absolutely does not exist. Previously, the collection on impermanence also mentioned this. Neither in the sky nor in the sea, nor deep in the mountains and forests. Is there truly any place in this world, or even beyond it, where the Lord of Death's grasp cannot extend, where this means that whether it's in the sky, the ocean, or the mountains, there is absolutely nowhere that the Lord of Death does not go, or a place he simply cannot enter. Such a place simply does not exist at all. If we try to escape death by hiding in the ocean, it won't work either. Trying to hide in the sky won't work either. There truly is no place where something is born but does not in the end eventually die, fade away, or cease to exist. If such a place existed, with the compassion of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, many sentient beings could be safely settled there, but such a place simply does not exist. I've actually told this story before as well. Two monks, both deeply engaged in the study of logic, decided one day to visit the home of an elderly woman who lived nearby. They went to her house together. Because they arrived in the evening, it was about to get dark. The two monks said, "Old Bodhisattva, would it be possible for the two of us to stay at your house for the night?" The old lady only had a daughter at home, and no one else. She said, "You monks, aren't you students of Buddhist logic? If you study logic, it's best not to stay at my house. Otherwise, you might actually end up giving me some really rather difficult questions. And honestly, that would be quite troublesome for me to handle. They replied, we do study logic, but we won't give you any difficult questions. Tonight, we have nowhere to go. Could you please let us stay for just one night, if it's not too much trouble? At that time, the old lady, seeing their situation, reluctantly agreed. Then they had dinner, and after dinner, the old lady started feeling around everywhere and finally found a small louse on herself. She took the little louse off very gently. Even now in Tibet, in some places where hygiene isn't great, it's common to find many lice in people's clothes. This still happens. She carefully took it out and then gently called her daughter over. Daughter, daughter, you must put this little louse somewhere it won't die. She meant to put it somewhere safe, not just throw it on the road or put it in the grass or inside some clothes. Then the monk said, old lady, if there really is a place where nothing dies, could you also, if possible, please allow the two of us, both of us, to stay in that place just for a little while longer? She was really, truly unhappy at that moment, and she said, you people are always just studying logic. Didn't I just say, don't nitpick with me? Honestly speaking, if I had known any earlier, I truly would not have allowed you two to stay at my house. This is also to say, where could there possibly be a place, anywhere at all, where nothing ever dies? There absolutely isn't one, not even a single one. Indeed, in this world today, if there really were a place where nothing dies, maybe a lot of rich people, people with power and ability, would first try to get immortality insurance or some kind of retirement insurance. So no matter how much these insurances cost, there are probably people who would be willing to pay, but nothing can be done. When a person reaches a certain point, they will inevitably have to face this. But for many people, although they know that one day they will die, they don't know when it will happen, today or tomorrow. They don't have any real sense of this. Everyone knows death is certain, but when it will happen is unknown, except for very few people who have cultivated themselves quite well, is absent. So one of the main reasons for our laziness is that we do not contemplate impermanence properly, especially since we are born in Jambudvipa, where lifespans are uncertain, and we are living in the degenerate age, where death can come very quickly. Now, in this degenerate age, in the early Kalpas, a person could live for 80,000 years, 60,000 years, and so on, many, many years. Lifespans were very long. But now, in this degenerate age, even though it is said that when the human lifespan is 100 years, the Buddha appears in the world, in reality, human life is extremely short nowadays. So death will come upon us very quickly. In fact, from the very day we are born, absolutely, right from the very beginning, step by step, gradually and steadily, just like the sun, glowing warmly, slowly sets behind the western mountains, its golden light stretching gently across. Minute by minute, step by step, we begin to move toward death, drawing closer to it. A person's lifespan really never increases. It's like a leaky pond. The water inside will never be full. It just keeps decreasing, gradually getting smaller and never increasing at any point. No matter what happens, it only diminishes further, always. Moreover, the messengers of death, or the demon of death, are like the shadows cast by the setting sun. Without a moment's pause, they draw ever closer, ever closer to you unceasingly. By the afternoon, perhaps those who live in the mountains know that with every passing moment, these shadows creep upward. In the same way, even though many people wish you a happy birthday, in reality, from that very day onward, each and every single day without exception. For example, when it comes to yaks, we generally commence the process of slaughtering them from this particular end, as is customary, and this is typically how it is done. And when a yak gets close to the messengers of death, we joyfully celebrate the special birthday of this truly wonderful and unique yak. Even though it is about to helplessly fall into the hands of the butcher, if we were to hold such a ceremony in front of it, I don't know if the yak would actually feel happy, since it's about to be handed over to the butcher. So sometimes people's actions are truly worth reflecting on. The time and place of our death is inherently uncertain. No one can be sure. Whether it's tomorrow, tonight, or even just between breaths right now, there's absolutely no guarantee at all whatsoever that we won't at some point eventually depart from this life. Because all phenomena are impermanent. No one can say for certain, I absolutely won't die tomorrow, or I will never die tonight. Or can you truly admit to yourself, I absolutely won't die between breaths? Do we have that certainty? Absolutely not, really. No matter how wise, eloquent, or well-versed in doctrine a person may be, there is no certainty that I won't die right now. It's just that, in a general sense and overall speaking, from a very broad and somewhat coarse perspective, you won't die, will you? It's merely a doubtful mindset that jumps to conclusions. But as described in Buddhist logic, if we say, I definitely won't really die right now because of such and such reason, can we actually come up with a complete line of reasoning for that? In this case, that is simply absolutely impossible. For example, if I say, I definitely won't die tomorrow, absolutely not. Why is that? Can you perhaps provide a truly strong, compelling, and absolutely conclusive reason, one that leaves no room for doubt or uncertainty? No one can. In that case, we should all really be aware of the state we're actually in at any given moment. That's why the Kitigaba Sutra also says, the great demon of impermanence, a force that embodies the sudden and unpredictable changes that define we have not made any kind of appointment, absolutely none, with this great demon of impermanence. But it will suddenly and quite unexpectedly arrive right at the very moment when we least expect it. Truly, when that inevitable final moment finally comes, we take our final breath, breathe our last, and quietly, peacefully leave this gentle world behind us. At that time, every aspect of our lives undergoes a tremendous upheaval. Sometimes when we visit people who are nearing the end of their lives in our lives, the feeling is quite profound. A couple of days ago, I went to the home of a deceased person in Lokima Township. She hadn't stopped breathing yet, but she couldn't move. She knew I had come to recite sutras for her. Sometimes when you see someone who is truly close to death, at that very moment, all of her beloved children and close relatives who cared for her deeply were gathered closely around her. Everyone was crying, and she must have been aware of what was happening. When I recited sutras for her, she put her hands together to pray briefly. Her family was quite well off, financially and otherwise. At that time, I thought she had worked hard to build everything in her life. And now, she could only leave it all behind, whether she wanted to or not. Her way of leaving was still relatively peaceful. Perhaps when she was near death, she had managed to prepare herself. I heard she had been ill a month or two, suffering long. She herself probably felt, maybe this time there is no hope for me. She had thoughts like that. But for many of us, especially those with busy schedules, we might not have such thorough preparation. There simply isn't enough time, not nearly enough, really. Death comes suddenly, and in an instant, our lives are over. The Bodhikarivatara also says this: death comes suddenly, leaving us completely unprepared. So truly, sometimes, as we all know, life is really, truly, incredibly, extremely fragile. None of us ever really expect this to happen. And we tend to think about it oftentimes in a very simple, naive, and quite cheerful way, perhaps even optimistically. The biggest problem for people in this world is the lack of an understanding of impermanence. Without a sense of impermanence, it is impossible for spiritual practice to succeed. The chapter on dependent origination also states this: who knows if we will die tomorrow? Today we should work hard. The truly great and formidable army of the Lord of Death, that vast and powerful force, are they by any chance your relatives, your kin, or your family members? None of us can ever truly know, nor can we ever be absolutely certain, with absolute certainty, if we will die tomorrow. So as long as we still have a breath left today, as long as there is even a small opportunity to practice, we must always be diligent. If we don't make progress, then we are really good friends or close family with the minions of Yama, the Lord of Death. If we were their relatives, could we rely on our relationship or bribe them? I don't want to fall into the lower realms. I'm counting on you. When the time comes, you must make all the necessary arrangements for me to go to the Pure Land. But for ordinary people, no one can be certain of this. Looking at people in the world today, are there really some who are such good friends with Yama's minions that they are not afraid? Have they connected and resolved things that true? If not, then why aren't we practicing contemplation right now? So now, in our daily lives, If we constantly have the thought, will I die? Our spiritual practice is more diligent. In the bathroom, you might think, will I die now? When you go to fetch water, you wonder, will I die now? At night, as you pray before sleep, you might think, I might not even be alive tomorrow morning. Each and every day is uncertain. There are also many Kadampa teachings on this topic. So we should think in this way, taking the time to carefully reflect on our choices and consider. Similarly, the protector Nagarjuna Bodhisattva also taught this. Life is beset by many harms and is impermanent, like a water bubble blown by the wind. To wake up after inhaling and exhaling during deep sleep is actually truly rare. The meaning here is that when people are peacefully and soundly asleep, breathing in and out calmly and steadily, their bodies and minds at rest, we still cannot be completely certain that death will not occur during this time. To wake up safely after not dying in one's sleep should also be regarded as something extremely rare, because life truly, genuinely exists only between breaths. It is also stated in the Buddha's scriptures that life is between breaths. Long ago in the past, the Buddha himself also expressed this teaching as recorded in the well-known Sutra of 42 chapters. One day, the Buddha gathered his disciples and looked at them with calm wisdom. As they sat quietly before him, he asked, "How long do you think a person's life truly lasts?" The disciples listened intently, considering the depth of his question. Some people answered, well, perhaps just a few days, maybe even less. The Buddha then said, no, that's not correct at all, not quite. Some said, as long as it takes to eat a meal. The Buddha said, this is also incorrect. Some followers said, life exists between breaths. The Buddha said, that answer is correct. So now the quality of our lives is extremely, extremely fragile. For example, this house can be reliably and assuredly guaranteed to last for several years or even many decades without any damage. If there are no unusual natural disasters, we can make the guarantee. But can we sign a contract with anyone regarding the length of our lives? Can we say, my life is just as durable as the concrete buildings outside, that it won't be damaged years or 50? Is anyone truly confident about this? No one can be certain. Letter to a friend says, in our lives, we often face many different dangers and challenges, while truly favorable and beneficial conditions are, unfortunately, very few. It's just like a bubble, simply in the wind. If we can, even for a moment, wake up between breaths or from deep sleep, if you didn't die last night and you wake up while brushing your teeth, you should think, wow, this is truly amazing and rare. I didn't die yesterday, and today I'm still alive like this. When we say this, perhaps those without cultivation experience wonder what's so remarkable about it. It's absolutely, certainly impossible to die yesterday. You're not sick, you're perfectly fine. How could you die in the morning? Except for extremely rare cases, it's impossible to die. But for each of us, truly indeed, if between breaths or sleeping at night, the house collapses or an earthquake strikes and you suddenly die, who would ever know? Not long ago, there was a Dharma friend who was in retreat in her own meditation room. For some unknown reason, the house suddenly caught fire. A little while later, when people eventually checked on her, she had by that time already sadly passed away inside. She probably never imagined that morning that today would be the day she left this world. It never crossed her mind. So none of us ever really thinks, oh, I'll die this year, I'll die next year. If we really knew that, maybe we would prepare in advance. There was once a Dharma friend who said, sometimes death can be a bit frightening. Everyone should know if you're going to live to 60 or 80, then you could prepare ahead of time. Otherwise, when exactly will you really die? He was half skeptical, not particularly convinced by Buddhism. He thinks that in his mind, everyone is like Uttarakuru. How nice it would be if our lifespan was predetermined. Whether it is, it doesn't matter. In any case, unfortunately, some people will die very soon. For example, among the several hundred people here today, by this time next year, some of them will definitely be gone. But since we lack supernatural powers, we can't know if it'll be me or you. Many people have no idea. So impermanence is indeed quite frightening. Many people today tend to focus their attention mainly on what is happening in their current lives, often not thinking much about the past or considering what might happen in the future, and don't consider after death or when death comes. They completely lack the courage in any way to face this. Whenever this topic comes up, they just brush it aside and refuse to talk about it. But instead of avoiding it, we should be facing it. We should consider what to do when time of death comes. In this regard, practitioners are truly admirable because practitioners have an awareness of impermanence. Whether impermanence appears in their own lives or in others, when impermanence manifests, they can accept it. We often see that some Buddhists who practice well, even when they themselves are approaching death, still have a smile on their face. When they see friends or relatives die, they already understand that human life is like a lamp in the wind. There is truly nothing permanent about it at all. But for those who never studied Buddhism, when they face impermanence in their lives, or when others have a short lifespan, they feel especially distressed. This is closely related to our spiritual practice, especially in our daily lives. So here, indeed, there are many adverse conditions affecting our lifespan. Just as Nagarjuna Bodhisattva said in the Jewel Garland, the causes of death are many, the causes of life are few. There are many causes of death, whereas the conditions for survival, including food and medicine needed to sustain ourselves, these often end up becoming causes of death instead. And such occurrences are actually quite common. Therefore, we should consider this. The fact that I didn't die last night is truly precious and rare. Some Dharma teachers, when explaining the verse, to attain awakening is extremely rare, say that to truly and fully achieve complete and total enlightenment, all within the span of a single breath, is something that is... This explanation is incorrect, because an explanation is also given below. And when you actually connect it with all of the content that was mentioned above, while discussing impermanence, suddenly having a great awakening, if that really happened, it would indeed be rare, but there's no need to interpret it that way. So when fellow practitioners are, in fact, teaching others, you must have a truly systematic lineage. Without exception, at all times, you must thoroughly and completely understand all the content within. Otherwise, it will also lead to misunderstandings and some unreasonable interpretations. So here it is said that the lifespan of sentient beings is indeed impermanent. This is something everyone must keep in mind. Right now, although we all know that we will die someday, because the uncertainty of the time of death hasn't arisen in our continuum, this is very crucial. No matter who it is in society, they always feel they will die one day. Maybe dying young or maybe dying old, he feels it. But because the concept of the uncertainty of the time of death has not arisen in his continuum, as His Holiness Jigme Phuntsog previously taught, this is crucial. When studying Mahayana Buddhism, especially contemplating impermanence, the Nyingma and Kagyu schools placed great emphasis on this practice. After practicing for some time, one will definitely become very diligent, cannot help but be diligent. Just think, life is so short, you can't possibly spend every day in laziness. In the past, in Master Lianqi's well-known Essays from the Bamboo Window, he quoted many poems from Tang Dynasty poets. They discuss how people in the world waste time and are lazy. Some are always sightseeing, playing, and seeking pleasure. In addition, there are also a great many people all around the world who unfortunately choose to drink and, as a result, end up wasting their precious time. And many people choose to gamble, seeking excitement or the thrill of chance, while others write poetry, finding themselves drawn deeply into the art and becoming emotionally attached to their own poetic creations, and so on. He said that, generally speaking, monastics, as a rule, don't drink alcohol. But they might spend their days writing poetry with discriminating thoughts, and in this way pass their time without truly engaging in practice, which is quite common. So many people, including some practitioners, under the influence of discriminating thoughts, fail to contemplate impermanence properly. Every day they are busy and preoccupied with things. Are you busy with things meaningful for your spiritual practice or are you just occupied with things in this world that have no real significance? You must examine this carefully. When the awareness of impermanence arises continuously within you, you will always have this feeling, am I going to die this time? For example, when you go out somewhere, you might sometimes find yourself wondering, will I possibly die on the way or not? This kind of mindset will naturally be present at all times. But if you don't contemplate impermanence properly, you think, I won't die. What will things be like in 50 years? Nowadays, many worldly people even think, what will I eat in 50 years? What will I drink in 50 years? How will I live then in this situation? People are always making all kinds of arrangements and preparations in their minds. But over those 50 years, your body and mind will definitely undergo tremendous changes. So the concept that the time of death is uncertain is something very few people have. As a result, people are constantly attached to their daily lives, wasting their lives in anxiety over gain and loss. Truly, the preliminary practices of Dzogchen are extremely precious. I hope that you will read over and over again the content we discuss each time. If you truly understand its actual meaning, then a truly genuine and deeply profound sense of renunciation will naturally and gradually arise quite forcefully within our hearts and minds toward all things in the world, whether it's emotions or worldly relatives or status and wealth. None of these really matter. They are all impermanent and can disappear in an instant. For example, if you have wealth, it isn't mush, it's impermanent. A Dharma friend once told me, what you say is indeed true, truly. Ants work so hard every day to accumulate their little stores of wealth. But when a hailstorm comes, it's all gone in an instant. This analogy fits perfectly with what happened after the recent financial crisis. We worked so hard to accumulate so much, but when the hailstorm of the financial crisis hit, it was gone in a flash, empty. All I could do was look up at the vast, boundless blue sky above me. So sometimes, indeed, truly, if you cultivate impermanence, many analogies will come to mind. If you don't understand impermanence, blame fate and others. You'll think, I'm really unlucky. What should I do? Should I jump off a building or take sleeping pills? These thoughts keep circling in your mind because you don't understand the impermanence of all phenomena, and this natural law of reality is always in motion. When you don't understand this situation, it feels like a sudden, extremely unfair blow has struck you. But that's not the case. For each of us, whether it's illness or life itself, any conflict that we have with absolutely all of it, always has underlying causes and resulting effects every single time, without exception. So good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results. It's not that some people have problematic thinking. No one really understands the statement if it's not really explained. As for this explanation, I personally have the right to interpret this kind of riddle. Next, let me talk about this. Just when we are immersed in painstakingly pursuing comfort, happiness, and reputation in this life, the Lord of Death Yama may appear before us, holding a black rope, bearing his fangs, and suddenly stand before us at that moment. Even if we possess a brave army, great power, and abundant wealth, the eloquence of the wise, the beauty of women, or even swift steeds known of these will be of any help. We never really know exactly when we humans will die. Many people working hard or enjoying themselves are constantly pursuing happiness, prosperity, and wealth in their lives. Day after day, while they are deeply and completely immersed in this state, death can suddenly arrive. The messengers of Yama, the Lord of Death, holding black ropes in their hands, bearing their fangs, with hateful and fearsome faces. Whether in Chinese Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, whenever the king of the intermediate state, or Yama, the Lord of Death, is portrayed, they are shown holding these things. Of course, for some beings, this kind of vision does indeed appear at the moment of death. For some, even before their last breath, Yama's messengers appear before their eyes. For some, these visions come after they stop breathing, but for others, it may differ. Whenever the Lord of Death appears before you, in that very moment, as you stand there directly facing him, take a breath, if you possibly can. At that moment, no matter how many troops you command, if having an army could really prevent death, military commission chairmen and chiefs of staff in some countries, these people simply would never die. They have thousands upon thousands of soldiers ready to surround them, protect them, still useless. At the moment of death, all those soldiers can do is send wreaths for them. Other than that, there's nothing else they can do. If there were powerful forces like a national president or a head of state or some highly respected, notable, authoritative leaders from around the world, when they die, even if there were a way, even if the entire nation did everything they could to protect them, it would still be impossible. If there were a way for great wealth to prevent death, some of today's entrepreneurs, big bosses and tycoons, for example, you see, they might actually be willing to completely give up all of their millions of dollars, all of their wealth. They might really be willing to do that. In my experience, I've seen some quite wealthy people go to the hospital on several occasions. They'll get heart and liver transplants if it costs tens of thousands, no problem. As long as I can, even if it's just to live another 5 years, that's fine. Back when I was in Shanghai, I heard about a boss who was really pitiful. He looked very wealthy, and all the clothes he wore were extremely high-end. He told the doctor, as long as I don't lose my life, if there's any possible way at all, in any way, no matter what, when it comes to money, you can do whatever you want. There'll be no problem. He opened his mouth wide, but the doctor couldn't do anything about it. She said, take it slow, just go home for now and really focus on resting and recuperating. First, make sure you give yourself time to heal. So when we're in the hospital, if we hear go home and recuperate, it might not really be very good news. You may feel it's time to go to a monastery or start practicing Phawa. Please don't cry anymore. There's really no need to beg the doctor, okay? Please? Doctor, please, I'm begging you. Nurse, could you please think of another way for me? No matter what, he really couldn't come up with any solution. So for those who practice impermanence, I once took an elderly practitioner to Mekang Hospital. Later, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with liver cancer. Although the doctor didn't reveal the truth in front of him at that particular moment, some of the doctor's expressions made everything clear. Realizing, he said, let's not waste time. I'd better go back to the monastery. You all don't need to do this. There's really no suffering. Let's just go back. He took the initiative to ask us to return, and we honestly told him the whole truth. He said, there's definitely nothing that can be done. It's fine. Going back is good. His expression didn't change at all. He remained perfectly still. He was quite simply very happy. This is what cultivation is. Practitioners have this kind of attitude because, first of all, they truly understand the deeper and genuine nature of their own life. So even greatly abundant wealth, in the end, after all, is ultimately of no use. And even the eloquence of a truly wise persona, no matter how well you can actually speak, whether you're an expert or scholar, regardless of how impressive you are in daily life, when the day of your death comes, you can't argue with the minions of Yama, nor can you win any debate with anyone. And as for beauty, horses, luxury cars, no matter what kind of worldly wealth or power you have, in the grand scheme of things, it's useless. It won't help at all. Even if you hide inside an impenetrable iron box, no matter what, even if there are hundreds of thousands of warriors outside, armed with sharp weapons, with the tips of their arrows and spears forming a protective circle around you, they still can't guard you in the slightest, nor can they shield you at all. This is a hypothetical analogy. Even if the deceased is completely sealed away, locked securely inside an iron box that is utterly impenetrable and impossible to... Usually, iron boxes in this world are quite sturdy. He is in it, and outside there are 100,000 warriors holding all kinds of weapons with the sharp points of their weapons facing outward, guarding against the Lord of Death and Yama, constantly protecting him. Is there any way out? There really isn't. On the day you die, no matter what method you try, there truly is none. At the moment of a person's death, perhaps many people really don't want to die and still wish to live. But there are some practitioners who, at a certain point, are actually willing to die. Yes, especially elderly people who recite Amitabha Buddha's name with great confidence. I can leave at any time if I want to. In fact, I would rather leave a bit earlier so I can see Amitabha Buddha sooner. Because as long as I haven't left this physical body, I won't be able to see Amitabha Buddha. But once I leave, I will definitely see him. There's no doubt about it. For many people, this really might be related to their own faith. Some people, when they hear this, can't accept it. How could it be that simple? How could it be that joyful? Some people seem to think that life in this world is the happiest. But there are some who are confident that after death, there is an even greater realm of happiness. So when a person dies, no matter what you do, there's nothing you can do about it. Not even the slightest can be protected or shielded. When the Lord of Death, Yama, in a solemn and deliberate manner, carefully places the ominous black noose around the neck of the deceased person, in a final act, all they can do is turn ashen-faced, with tearful eyes and a stiffened body. and is taken onto the great road of the afterlife. When you take your very final breath, at that very moment, your entire facial complexion and appearance also noticeably transforms and changes as well. And some people, when they die, soft, gentle tears flow from their eyes as if in silent sorrow. Their whole body has already stiffened, and by that time, they've already stopped breathing. No matter how powerful a person was in life, whether they were famous, well-known, or wealthy, no matter who they were, their body's just placed on a rack. Actually, when we see a dead body, in most cases, those who have practiced contemplating impermanence will have a certain feeling. If someone never practiced impermanence, they'll think, he died, but how could I die? I'm not even sick. They don't feel anything. So in this regard, there is really quite a big difference. When you are at this moment, you will definitely have to leave. At that time, no hero can save you, and no great master can give you instructions. For example, when you're about to leave, even if thousands of heroes want to save you and help you, there is nothing they can do. Even if some authoritative, capable, and highly respected people give orders and demand the demon of death or Yama's minions not approach, it still won't work. Food simply cannot tempt you. There is absolutely nowhere to escape, and truly nowhere at all to hide. There's no one to rely on, no relatives to help, no way out. Nor can the great compassion of any venerable being offer protection. Even if Medicine Buddha himself were to descend in person, he would still be unable to prolong a life that has already ended. There is nothing that can be done. So at that moment, even if you have the most incredibly sumptuous, wonderfully mouth-watering, absolutely delicious food, there is no way to bribe, no way to eat. If you want to escape, even if you go to the Great Sea, to the ends of the earth, no matter where you go, there is nothing you can do. If there were a place to escape, many people might go live somewhere where death does not exist. If you knew, for example, that you wouldn't die after going to America or Canada, then many wealthy people would get passports and go to America. But even Americans, even those with red hair, after all, must inevitably, in the end, still face death. They are very afraid of death. When His Holiness Jigme Funsok went to America in the past, many people seemed especially afraid of death. This really isn't much different from people with black hair. But in my impression, aren't they even more afraid? They really, truly want to survive. Once there was a person who was suffering from AIDS, a terrible and devastating disease, and who looked truly pitiful, so helpless, so alone, and so very vulnerable. He kept talking about how if there were a way not to die in this world, or if he could live for a certain number of years, how much money he would in reality be willing to spend. He searched all over the world for renowned doctors, but he could do nothing. When the time comes, when your own karma and conditions are exhausted, there's nowhere left to escape, a place to hide, for example, in the mountains or even in a cowshed. You could go to some other places as well, but in the end, there's nowhere to go, no one to rely on or turn to. If there were help, say, from a leader, a spiritual teacher, or some compassionate master, if these people came to help you, then maybe it would be possible. No way. Even in our world with deities like Amateus or Medicine Buddha, these Buddhas who care deeply about the lives of sentient beings and have had extraordinary karmic connections in past lives, have great loving kindness and compassion. In this world, the power of the Buddha is most subtle and profound. But when faced with someone whose time of death has arrived, anything they can do, nothing can be done. Some non-Buddhists, how can people still die even after being blessed by a living Buddha? People still die after being blessed by a guru. Such statements are ignorant because life is inherently impermanent. The Abhidhammakosha also states, sometimes merit is exhausted, but lifespan remains. Sometimes lifespan ends, but merit has not been exhausted. There are 4 such categories. If someone's lifespan has not ended, but only their merit is exhausted, then even if Medicine Buddha were to appear, nothing could be done. If one's lifespan not over, merit exhausted, then performing Buddhist rituals, ceremonies, and reciting sutras for them can have a noticeable effect on the outcome. So it's important to analyze the situation. In the end, when you find yourself in a situation where there's truly absolutely no way to survive, why didn't Buddha bless me? Why do I still die even after reciting so many sutras? I hope I never die. Such thoughts are extremely naive. So indeed, even if Medicine Buddha appears before sentient beings, in the end, there is nothing that can be done. Therefore, we absolutely must not be lazy or negligent under any circumstances, putting things off again and again. Instead, we should sincerely practice the supreme Dharma that will definitely benefit us at the time of death. So we must never, ever keep procrastinating. If we continue to keep delaying like this, over time, eventually, in the end, our practice or efforts will ultimately not be successful. Persistent laziness, especially in actual daily practice, is truly the single greatest obstacle to genuine spiritual cultivation. If you are especially, truly, and genuinely lazy, even if in fact you happen to live a very long and lengthy life, your spiritual practice will not make any progress and you will not improve. Therefore, diligence is important in one's study and practice. If you are diligent, even just one day of diligent effort can bring tremendous results. So, as it is so often thoughtfully expressed or articulated in the revered ancient text known as the Dhammapada, if a person lives 100 years with wrong views and unwholesome intentions, it is better to live one day with diligence, receiving the true Dharma. This means that, in other words, if someone lives for 100 years on this planet, but is deeply and persistently attached to wrong, mistaken, or misguided views, and does not make any effort to cultivate or practice virtue properly or in the right way, he will spend his whole life creating negative karma and will not be able to practice virtuous deeds. But if someone for a day practices diligently and upholds the true Dharma, that far surpasses 100 days of laziness and negligence. Therefore, we absolutely must not be negligent. If we become negligent, our human life, which is already very short, will become even shorter, especially since there are so many distractions and obstacles along the way in our daily lives. So when does spiritual practice actually succeed? Spiritual accomplishment is not something that can simply be achieved in just a day or two, after all. It truly requires long-term effort and genuine ongoing commitment. In the past, there was a text in Han Chinese Buddhism called The Precious Teachings of the Chan Monastery that said, as is often said, the learning of sages is not attained or acquired in a single day. The states attained by the ancient sages and worthies were certainly not achieved through just a day or two of effort. Rather, they were the result of sustained and continuous dedication, but rather through long-term consistent accumulation, day after day, year after year. Only then can one finally achieve realization. So many people here might think, well, actually, I've already been studying for 3 years. I've been learning for so many years. Why haven't I achieved anything yet? I have been practicing for a long time. I have been practicing for 3 years. Yes, you could say you've practiced for 3 years. But if we actually take the time to really carefully check those 3 years in detail, for example, there are, in fact, 24 hours in a day, as we all know, obviously. How much time did we actually spend practicing each day on average, would you say? If you practice for just 1 hour a day, then over 3 years, how many days have you actually practiced? We can calculate it. It really is possible to figure it out. So over 3 years, we might have only practiced for a month in total. If you actually do the math and count the time you spent contemplating impermanence each day, so you can't say, I've studied for 3 years, as if you spent 3 years without eating or drinking and devoted all your time to studying the Dharma. That's not really the case. For most people, even with practice, maybe in between you say, I practice for half an hour every morning. But is it really a quality 30 minutes? Are you truly settled in the contemplation of impermanence during that time? Is there? For some people, maybe not. Within that half hour, the first 15 minutes might be spent in a daze. Then in the middle, impermanence, and near the end, your mind starts wandering again. Even though you say you practice for half an hour, in reality, you might not have even put in 10 minutes of real effort during that half hour. In this way, our study is indeed still certainly very difficult, especially for lazy people. Their practice and study are, over time, gradually and easily worn away. In the Mahayana Sutra on the 6 perfections of profound meaning are metaphors about laziness. A lazy person is like a pestle. There are 2 metaphors for lazy people. One is an iron pestle, a large pestle that cannot stand upright on its own, and another one that simply cannot be used by itself. So this kind of lazy character in people makes them unable to develop interest in their practice. And this is greatest difficulty. Also, they can't truly control themselves or even really take proper charge of themselves. I think our practice is not successful now. The biggest obstacle is laziness and lack of diligence. If you are not diligent, you definitely won't have any sense of impermanence. You can sleep soundly in the morning, and sleeping for several hours is no problem at all. Impermanence is impermanence. Snoring You sleep so soundly. If that's the case, when will you ever succeed in practice? The great masters and practitioners of the past weren't like this. They had strength from within. No matter what, they just couldn't seem to fall asleep. During the day, they had a determined drive in their hearts and didn't want to be distracted or lose concentration. They didn't want to talk about meaningless things with others, really simply. Now, when I look at many people in the Bodhi society outside, honestly, the concept of impermanence is very different for most people. In the past, with ordinary worldly people, every day was just sometimes muddled and aimless. Day after day was spent eating, drinking, and having fun, and just like that, decades went by. There was no real feeling about it. Now, even though I sometimes get distracted after being distracted, I actually do feel a bit ashamed. Sigh, I didn't practice properly at all today. I'm really such a terrible person. I start to punish myself. Some people sometimes pull at their own hair, and some even pinch at their own flesh, and some even hit themselves with their fists. This is actually very good. We should truly punish ourselves, and in order to persevere, draw forth inner strength from deep within. Many great monks and masters truly have some wonderful stories about this. So for us ordinary people, even though we can talk about it and listen to it, if we don't actually contemplate impermanence well in our actions, then we won't accomplish other practices. Therefore, we sincerely hope, though, we can't claim to be like the great masters of the past. All our time devoted to this, but our actions now are actually a bit different from before, so we really shouldn't be too lax. If we are too lazy, then whether it's worldly or spiritual matters, nothing will succeed. Everyone should really be diligent. If you contemplate impermanence well, then other practices will quite naturally be motivated. When it comes to practice, after a certain point, it's best if it becomes automatic, rather than always relying on external motivation every day. If every day it's someone else urging you today, a Dharma teacher encourages you to practice diligently, tomorrow a mentor urges you, and if they don't say anything at all, you lose all initiative, then that's very difficult. If you have your own genuine sense of initiative, that's really absolutely very good. But as ordinary people, we're like children. For children, parents and teachers remind them, you have to do your homework. If you don't, you'll get punished. Today, you can't eat. Every day they urge the child. Lack supervision? If there's no mom or dad around, then, I can watch TV. Wow. They might not be self-disciplined. That's just how we ordinary people are. If there's no teaching, guidance, or even any support from a teacher right by our side at all, we end up scattered and distracted daily. So we really hope that everyone will sincerely pray to the Guru and the Three Jewels. Once the concept of impermanence truly takes root in your mind, it's unlikely that your practice will become scattered. You simply wouldn't dare. You really wouldn't dare. But because we haven't reached that level in our practice, this is the reason why many people are rather distracted. First, understand the principle and then put it into practice in your daily actions. Stop here.
Om